I was in my kitchen making tea when my phone buzzed with a family group chat notification. Tyler had written, "We think it's best if Mom keeps her distance for a while." Amber immediately liked the message. My hands shook as I read it. I typed back calmly, "Understood. I'll also step back from paying your house mortgage and those $15,000 monthly transfers." I hit send. Within 2 minutes, my phone started ringing nonstop. I silenced it, took a sip of tea, and watched the messages flood in. The panic had begun. My phone kept lighting up on the counter, call after call from Tyler, 3 missed calls from Amber. Then Sarah, my daughter, calling confused and asking what was happening. I didn't answer any of them. I just sat there in my living room, staring at that group chat message, allowing myself to finally feel the hurt I'd been pushing down. You see, my husband Robert died 4 years ago. Heart attack, sudden and devastating. He left me with substantial savings and a good life insurance policy. We'd worked hard our whole lives, saved carefully, invested wisely. Robert always said that money was for our future, for our security, and maybe to help the kids if they really needed it. Really needed it. 18 months ago, Tyler and Amber came to me. They'd found their dream home, they said. A beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in one of the nicer neighborhoods across town. But they were just short on the down payment. Could I help? Tyler was my son, my firstborn. Of course I could help. I gave them $80,000 without hesitation. Then came the mortgage. Tyler explained that his promotion at work was coming through any day, but in the meantime, could I cover the mortgage temporarily? Just $3,500 a month. Just until he got that promotion. I said yes. I wanted to help my son build his life. 8 months ago, Amber called me crying. She'd had a miscarriage. I didn't even know she was pregnant. My heart broke for her. Through her tears, she explained they had medical bills. Lots of them. The miscarriage had complications. They needed help. Could I send $15,000 a month for a while? It seemed like a lot. But she was grieving, Tyler was struggling, and I had the money. What kind of mother would I be if I said no? So for 8 months I'd been sending $18,500 every single month. Before that, 10 months of just the mortgage. I'd given them over $200,000 in a year and a half. I never questioned it. I never asked for receipts or proof. They were family. You trust family. My phone rang again. Sarah. I finally answered. "Mom, what's going on? Tyler's calling me freaking out. Amber's texting me in all caps. What happened?" "Did you see the group chat?" I asked quietly. "Yeah, I saw Tyler's message about you keeping your distance. I was going to call you about that. It seemed really harsh. But then you said something about mortgage payments and transfers?" "Mom, what's he talking about?" I explained it all to her. Every dollar, every month. Every lie I was starting to suspect. Sarah was silent for a long time. "Mom, I had no idea. Tyler told me you were becoming too controlling, that you were inserting yourself into their marriage too much, that Amber was feeling suffocated by you." My stomach dropped. Controlling? Sarah? I barely visit them. Maybe once a month, and only when they invite me. I've been so careful to give them space, to respect their privacy. "I know, Mom. I know. But that's what he's been telling me for months. Amber, too. She's been making little comments about you being overbearing whenever we talk." I felt sick. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. They'd been setting this up, preparing to cut me out while keeping my money flowing. They wanted my financial support without my presence. I was an ATM to them, nothing more. That evening, I did something I'm not proud of. I drove by Tyler's house. I told myself I just wanted to see the place I'd been paying for. But really, I needed to understand what I'd been funding. The house was beautiful. I'd seen it before, of course, but not in months. Tyler had discouraged visits. Now I understood why. In the driveway sat 2 brand-new luxury cars that hadn't been there last time. A black BMW and a silver Mercedes. I pulled over down the street and just stared. Those cars together, were worth over $120,000. Through the large front windows, I could see people moving around inside. A dinner party. I counted 6 couples, maybe more. The dining room table was set with what looked like catered food. Wine bottles everywhere. Amber was wearing a cocktail dress I'd never seen. Tyler was laughing, holding an expensive bottle of something up to show his guests. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching my son and daughter-in-law entertain their friends in the house I'd bought them, arriving in cars I'd essentially paid for, serving food and wine purchased with money I'd sent for medical bills. Medical bills from a miscarriage that I was starting to wonder had even happened. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The $15,000 monthly transfers weren't for medical bills. The mortgage help wasn't temporary. Tyler hadn't gotten that promotion because Tyler didn't have that job anymore. How long had they been lying to me? I drove home in a daze. When I walked in my door, I had 63 text messages and 47 missed calls. I ignored every single one. Instead, I went to my home office and pulled out every bank statement from the last 18 months. I made a spreadsheet. I documented every transfer, every payment, every dollar. The total made me feel physically ill. $218,000. That's what I'd given them. That's what they'd taken from me while planning to push me out of their lives. I stayed up all night, researching, documenting, preparing. By morning, I'd made a decision. I was done. No more money. No more enabling. No more being used. I wanted to see exactly how far they'd go. I wanted to see their true colors. I didn't know then that their true colors were darker than I could have imagined. 3 days passed. I ignored every attempt at contact. 47 calls, 63 text messages. I counted each one. I read each one. They ranged from apologetic to confused to angry. Tyler's messages went from, "Mom, can we talk?" to, "You're being unreasonable," to, "Fine, don't answer." Amber's were shorter, sharper. "This is childish. You're overreacting. We need to talk now." I spent those 3 days gathering information. I called Tyler's company. I said I was following up on paperwork for insurance purposes. The woman in HR was confused. "Ma'am, Tyler hasn't worked here in over a year. He was laid off in the restructuring last September. 13 months. Tyler had been unemployed for 13 months, and I'd had no idea. On the 4th morning, someone knocked on my door. Loud, insistent. I looked through the peephole and saw Tyler standing on my porch, shifting his weight from foot to foot, looking nervous. I almost didn't open it, but I needed to hear what he'd say. I needed to know how far the lies went. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Mom." He smiled, that same smile he'd used as a little boy when he'd broken something and was trying to charm his way out of trouble. "Can I come in? We need to talk. We can talk here." His smile faltered. "Mom, come on. Don't be like this." That message in the group chat? It was taken out of context. Amber was just stressed. You know how she gets. She didn't mean anything by liking it. And what about you writing it? I was just trying to give us all some space to cool down. I didn't mean permanently. You know that. He stepped closer, tried to hug me. "Come on, Mom. Don't shut me out over a misunderstanding." I stayed rigid, didn't return the embrace. "Tyler, where's your promotion? When did it come through?" He stepped back, his face paling slightly. "It's still being processed. These things take time in big companies. You know how corporate bureaucracy is." "What company?" "What? What company, Tyler? Where do you work?" He laughed, but it sounded forced. "You know where I work. Same place I've been for 5 years. Try 13 months ago. That's when you were laid off." The color drained completely from his face. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "How did you? I mean, that's not. Who told you that?" "I called them. Tuesday morning. They confirmed you haven't worked there since last September." I kept my voice level, so I'll ask again. "Where do you work?" Tyler looked around, like he was hoping someone would appear and rescue him. "Mom, Okay, yes, I was laid off, but I was embarrassed. I didn't want to worry you. I've been looking, I've got interviews, something's going to come through soon. What have you been living on? Silence. Tyler, if you haven't worked in over a year, and Amber doesn't work, what have you been living on? His voice came out small. Your help. The money you've been sending. For medical bills. There were medical bills. How much? What? How much in medical bills, Tyler? From the miscarriage. Give me a number. He couldn't. He stood there on my porch, my 32-year-old son, and he couldn't tell me because we both knew the truth. There had been no miscarriage. Or, if there had been no significant medical bills. That $15,000 a month had been supporting their lifestyle. The cars, the dinner parties, the designer clothes I'd seen through the window. Get off my porch. Mom, please, get off my porch, Tyler. Before I say things I can't take back. I'll pay you back. I swear. Just don't cut us off. We'll lose everything. You mean you'll have to live within your means, like everyone else? That's when I heard another car pull up. Amber. She must have been waiting nearby. She got out of the Mercedes and walked up my driveway in heels that probably cost $300, carrying a purse I recognized as a designer brand worth at least $5,000. Helen. She never called me Mom. Always Helen. I'm glad you're finally talking to Tyler. We need to sort this out like adults. Adults pay their own bills, I said. Amber's eyes narrowed. Adults also help family when they're struggling. Or is that too much to ask from someone with as much money as you have? Struggling. Is that what you call it? Because the BMW and Mercedes in your driveway suggest otherwise. Amber's face flushed. Those are leased. For Tyler's business. What business? He doesn't have a job. He's consulting, working on contracts, building a client base. These things take time. She moved closer, her voice taking on an edge. You know what your problem is, Helen? You're jealous. You're a bitter, lonely widow who can't stand to see us happy. So you spy on us, make accusations, try to ruin what we've built. Built with my money. Money you gave freely. Money you volunteered. Don't act like we forced you. Show me the medical bills. What? From the miscarriage. Show me the bills. $15,000 a month for 8 months. That's $120,000. Show me what I paid for. Amber's jaw clenched. I don't have to show you anything. That's private medical information. Then we're done here. I started to close my door. Amber shoved her foot in the doorway. You're really going to do this? Cut off your own son? Let him lose his house? Destroy his credit? What kind of mother are you? The kind who finally sees who you really are. I looked past her to Tyler. Both of you. That's when I saw it. The look on Tyler's face. It wasn't shame or regret or even embarrassment anymore. It was cold calculation. He was looking at me like I was an obstacle, a problem to solve. Not his mother, not family, an obstacle. Amber pulled her foot back and I closed the door. Through the window, I watched them walk back to the Mercedes. Amber was gesturing wildly, clearly furious. Tyler was on his phone. They sat in my driveway for 15 minutes, and I could see them arguing. That night, I got a voicemail from Sarah. Her voice was tight, upset. Mom, Amber, called me crying. She said you attacked them, screamed at them, accused them of horrible things. She said you're trying to destroy their marriage. I don't know what to believe anymore, but could you please just call her? Apologize? Try to make peace? They're really struggling, and this is tearing the family apart. I listened to the message 3 times. This was it. This was their strategy. Turn Sarah against me, isolate me, make me the villain, paint themselves as the victims. I didn't call Sarah back. Not yet. I needed more information first. I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. So I called Margaret Brennan, an attorney I'd met through my book club. She specialized in family law and elder issues. I made an appointment for the next morning. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had come to this. How had my son become someone capable of such manipulation? Where had I gone wrong? By morning, I decided I hadn't gone wrong. Tyler had made choices, adult choices, and now he was going to face adult consequences. I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. The next week was relatively quiet. Too quiet. I met with Margaret, showed her everything. She was blunt and direct, in a way I appreciated. Helen, what they're doing has a name. Financial elder abuse. It's more common than people think, and the perpetrators are usually family members. I'm not elderly, I protested. I'm 63. The term applies to anyone over 60, and the pattern is clear. They've isolated you from your money through manipulation and lies. They've used your love and trust against you. This is abuse. The word hit me hard. Abuse. My son was abusing me. Margaret recommended I document everything and prepare for the possibility of legal action. I agreed, though I hoped it wouldn't come to that. Maybe Tyler and Amber would just accept the situation and move on. Maybe we could eventually rebuild some kind of relationship based on honesty. I was naive. A week later, Sarah called. Mom, Tyler wants to come over with Amber. They want to apologize, try to work things out. I said I'd be there too, so everyone feels comfortable. Please? For me? I should have said no. But Sarah sounded so hopeful, and I thought maybe, with her there as a buffer, we could at least clear the air. I agreed. They arrived on Sunday afternoon. Sarah got there first, looking nervous but optimistic. Then Tyler and Amber pulled up. I noticed immediately that they both looked more polished than last time. Tyler in a nice button-down shirt, Amber in a conservative dress. They were dressed for the part they were about to play. We sat in my living room. Sarah between them and me, like she could physically bridge the gap. Mom, Tyler started, his voice soft and earnest. I owe you an apology. We both do. Things got out of hand. We should have been honest with you about my job situation from the beginning. We were embarrassed, Amber added, her eyes downcast. Ashamed. We didn't want you to think we were failures. Sarah looked at me hopefully. I stayed quiet, waiting. The thing is, Tyler continued, we've been working really hard to turn things around. I've got some promising job leads. Amber's looking into going back to work. We're making changes. That's good, I said carefully. I'm glad you're getting back on your feet. But the transition is hard, Amber said. We're behind on some bills. The mortgage is due. We need help just a little longer, just until Tyler starts working again. There it was. The real reason for this visit. I can't do that, I said. Mom, please. Tyler leaned forward. Just the mortgage. Just $3,500 a month. We're not asking for the full amount anymore. I said no. You're going to let us lose our house? Amber's voice rose slightly. After we've apologized? After we've explained? Where did the money go? I asked. The $200,000 plus I gave you. Where is it? It's gone, Tyler said. Living expenses, the house, bills. It costs money to live. Mom, show me. Show me the bills, the expenses, where every dollar went. Amber stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. We're not children. We don't have to account for every penny to you. Then I don't have to give you any more pennies. That's when things shifted. Sarah tried to mediate, but Amber talked over her. You know what this is really about? You're jealous. You can't stand that we have a nice house, nice things, a good life. You're sitting here alone in this house, no husband, bitter and lonely, and you resent us for being happy. Amber, Sarah said sharply, that's not fair. But Amber was on a roll. No, she needs to hear this. Ever since Robert died, she's been different. Controlling, paranoid, making accusations. Helen, I'm sorry your husband died, but you can't take it out on us. I felt like I'd been slapped, using Robert's death as a weapon against me. Tyler didn't defend me. He just sat there, letting his wife attack his mother. I need to get something from my office, I said quietly. I'll be right back. I went upstairs to my home office, but not before I paused at the top of the stairs, out of sight. Their voices carried up. Do you think she'll cave? Amber whispered urgently. Maybe, Tyler replied. We just need her to at least cover the mortgage. If we can get Sarah fully on our side, we can pressure her. We should have been smarter about this, Amber hissed. We need to hold out 2 more months. The credit cards will carry us until then. My blood ran cold. Credit cards, plural. I walked back down quietly, carrying a folder. But instead of bank statements, I had something else. Something that had arrived at my house 2 weeks ago that I'd been investigating. I handed Sarah a credit card statement. This came to my address. Sarah unfolded it, her eyes scanning the page. Her face went white. Mom, is this? A credit card in my name that I didn't open. Look at the address. My address. Look at the charges. Tyler's face drained of color. Amber's mouth fell open. Sarah read aloud, her voice shaking. Balance of $47,000. Charges at designer stores, luxury restaurants, a weekend in Las Vegas. She looked up at Tyler. You told me you never went to Vegas. I asked about that work trip and you said it fell through. Sarah, I can explain, Tyler started. But Sarah wasn't listening to him anymore. She was looking at the fine print. It says here that Helen was listed as a co-applicant. Mom, did you apply for this? No. Someone forged my signature and used my address to get credit in my name. That's identity theft. That's fraud. The room exploded. Sarah was yelling at Tyler. Amber was yelling at me, claiming I was lying, that I must have forgotten applying for it. Tyler was trying to talk over everyone, his explanations contradicting themselves. Finally, Sarah stood up. Get out. Both of you. Get out of Mom's house right now. Sarah, please, Tyler begged. You committed fraud. Against our mother. Get out before I call the police myself. Tyler's face changed then. The mask dropped completely. You're going to regret this, he said to me, his voice low and cold. Both of you. Amber added, her voice vicious. You have no idea what we're capable of. You think cutting off money is bad? We can make your life hell. We can destroy you. You're going to wish you'd just kept writing those checks, you miserable old woman. They left, slamming my door so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. Sarah collapsed onto my couch, crying. I held her while she apologized over and over for not seeing it sooner, for not believing me. I told her it wasn't her fault. We were both victims of very skilled manipulators. That night, after Sarah went home to her family, I sat alone in my living room. Tyler's threat echoed in my head. We can make your life hell. The next morning, I found out what he meant. My email inbox had a message from a law firm. Tyler and Amber were suing me. They were claiming breach of verbal contract and emotional distress. They were suing me for $300,000, claiming I'd promised to support them, and was now maliciously reneging on that promise. But that wasn't the worst part. I had a missed call from an antique dealer whose name appeared on that credit card statement. Out of curiosity, I called back. Oh yes, Mrs. Anderson, the dealer said. I'm calling about the ruby ring. We have a potential buyer interested, and I wanted to verify the provenance before we proceed with the sale. My grandmother's ring. The antique ruby ring that had been in our family for 3 generations. I'd given it to Tyler 2 years ago, asking him to eventually propose to Amber with it, or pass it to his own children someday. It was worth at least $30,000, but its sentimental value was priceless. The ring isn't for sale, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause. Ma'am, we purchased that ring from Tyler Anderson over a year ago. We paid $18,000 for it. It's our property now. They'd sold my grandmother's ring. Sold my family history for cash to fund their lifestyle. I hung up the phone and sat in silence. My son wasn't just using me. He was systematically destroying everything I valued. My money, my reputation, my family heirlooms, my peace of mind. And now he was threatening legal action to extort more. I looked at my grandmother's photograph on the mantel, her stern but loving face staring back at me. She'd survived the Depression. She'd raised 4 children on almost nothing. She'd been strong when strength was required. I picked up the phone and called Margaret. They're escalating, I told her. We need to go on a fence. Are you sure? Margaret asked. This is your son. Are you ready for war? I thought about that cold look in Tyler's eyes. The calculation, the cruelty, the threats. He declared war first, I said. I'm just finally fighting back. Margaret moved fast. Within 3 days, she'd assembled a response to the lawsuit and filed counterclaims. But Tyler and Amber's attorney, a man named Roger Dunn who specialized in questionable civil suits, had filed motions that kept us on the defensive. Then things got worse. 2 weeks after the lawsuit was filed, I woke up to discover I'd been tagged in something on social media. I didn't use social media much, but Sarah called me that morning, her voice tight with anger. Mom, don't look at it. Just don't. I'm reporting it right now. Of course. I looked. Amber had posted a long, detailed story about me. It was public, shareable, designed to go viral. She'd written, I never thought I'd have to do this, but I need to speak my truth. My mother-in-law has been emotionally and financially abusing my husband for years. She's wealthy, and she's used that wealth to control every aspect of our lives. She made promises to help us, convinced us to buy a house we couldn't afford on our own, then pulled all support without warning when we didn't obey her every demand. She's tried to destroy our marriage, spread lies about us, and now she's threatening legal action because we dared to stand up to her. This is what narcissistic abuse looks like. This is what happens when toxic parents weaponize money. We're losing everything because I refuse to let her control us anymore. Please share our story. Elder financial abuse goes both ways. Sometimes the elder is the abuser. The post had been shared 400 times in 6 hours. The comments were brutal. People I'd never met were calling me a monster, a narcissist, a terrible mother. Some people were sharing their own stories of controlling parents, adding fuel to Amber's fire. I sat at my kitchen table, reading comment after comment, watching my reputation dissolve in real time. People from my church were seeing this, my book club, my neighbors, everyone. By afternoon, I'd received an email from my church women's group coordinator. It was polite but cold. Given the current family situation, we think it's best if you step back from volunteer activities until things are resolved. We need to consider the comfort of all our members. I'd been volunteering at that church for 30 years. I'd organized fundraisers, taught Sunday school, coordinated the food bank, and now I was being asked to leave because my son's wife was lying about me on the internet. Sarah was fighting back in the comments, defending me, but she was outnumbered. Tyler's friends, Amber's friends, people who believed the narrative they'd spun. I was the villain of their story. That evening, Sarah came over with her husband, Mark. Mark was a good man, steady and practical. He looked worried. Helen, I think you need to prepare for this to get uglier, he said. I work in PR. What they're doing is calculated. They're building public sympathy for their lawsuit. They're trying to make you seem like the aggressor, so that when this goes to court, they have character witnesses lined up. Can we fight back? Sarah asked. Can Mom tell her side? She could, Mark said carefully. But it might make things worse. Social media fights rarely help. The court is what matters. But the court wasn't my only problem. That night, Tyler sent me a text message. Just one line. You should have just kept paying, Mom. Now you're legally on the hook. Pay up, or we all go down together. I didn't understand what he meant until Margaret called the next morning, her voice grim. Helen, I need you to sit down for this. The bank that held Tyler's mortgage had been investigating the loan after I'd contacted them about the situation. They'd found something. The mortgage documents listed me as a cosigner. My signature was on the paperwork, but I'd never signed anything. I'd never agreed to be legally responsible for their mortgage. It's forgery, Margaret said. Clear forgery. But until we can prove that in court, the bank is holding you liable for the missed payments. How many payments have they missed? 5 months. They haven't paid since before you cut them off. They've been pocketing your money for other expenses. The amount was staggering. With late fees and penalties, the bank was demanding $83,000 from me, because my signature appeared on documents I'd never signed. Can we prove it's forged? I asked, feeling sick. We're getting a handwriting expert. But Helen, even if we prove forgery, your credit is damaged right now. The bank has already reported the delinquency, and Tyler knows this. That text message wasn't random. He's telling you that he made sure you'd be caught in the blast radius when they went down. I thought about that carefully planned dinner party, the luxury cars, the designer handbag. They'd known this was coming. They'd known they were going to stop paying the mortgage. They'd forged my signature as insurance, as leverage, as a way to force me to keep funding them. What do we do? I asked. We fight, Margaret said. But you need to know this is going to cost you. Legal fees, expert witnesses, time, stress, and there's no guarantee we win everything. What's the alternative? You could pay them off, settle the lawsuit, cover the mortgage, make this go away. I thought about Amber's social media post, Tyler's threats, my grandmother's ring sold for cash, the lies, the manipulation, the theft. No, I said. We fight. But fighting meant enduring more hits. Over the next 2 weeks, things escalated in ways I couldn't have imagined. Tyler and Amber's lawyer started deposing people I knew. My friends, my church acquaintances, my neighbors. He asked leading questions designed to make me seem forgetful, confused, maybe even mentally unstable. Has Helen ever seemed confused about dates? Have you noticed her repeating herself? Has she ever seemed paranoid or made unusual accusations? Most people defended me, but some, influenced by Amber's social media campaign or just uncomfortable being involved, gave answers that could be twisted. Well, she does seem more isolated since Robert died. I suppose she's gotten more cautious about things. Innocent observations that in the hands of a skilled attorney became evidence of cognitive decline. Then Sarah called me, crying. Mom, Tyler called me. He said if I keep defending you publicly, he'll make sure my kids know what kind of grandmother they have. He said he'll tell them you're trying to destroy their uncle. Mom, what do I do? Emma and Jacob are asking why we don't see Uncle Tyler anymore. Tyler was willing to poison my grandchildren against me. 8-year-old Emma and 11-year-old Jacob, who I'd babysat every week for years, who called me Grandma Helen and made me cards for my birthday. He was threatening to turn them against me, too. I told Sarah to protect her children first, always. If that meant she had to step back publicly, I understood. She refused, but I could hear the strain in her voice. This was tearing her apart. The worst came 3 weeks after the lawsuit was filed. I was sitting in Margaret's office, reviewing our defense strategy, when her assistant knocked urgently. Margaret, you need to see this. Now. Tyler and Amber weren't just suing me for breach of contract anymore. They were amending their lawsuit. The new filing claimed that I had early-stage dementia and that I'd manipulated them into financial arrangements they didn't understand. They were petitioning for a conservatorship over my finances, with Tyler as the conservator. I stared at the papers, my hands shaking. A conservatorship. They wanted legal control over my money, my assets, my life. They were claiming I was mentally incompetent. Can they do this? I asked, my voice barely audible. Margaret's face was hard. They can file for it. Whether they'll get it is another matter. But Helen, conservatorships are serious. Once they're established, they're very hard to overturn. We need to prove you're completely competent, and we need to do it fast. The hearing is in 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prove I wasn't losing my mind. 2 weeks while Tyler and Amber told anyone who would listen that their mother was declining and they were just trying to protect her from herself. That night, I lay in bed unable to sleep. My reputation was destroyed. My church had asked me to leave. My credit was damaged. My son was threatening my grandchildren. And now he wanted to take control of everything I had left. I thought about just giving up, about paying them off and ending this nightmare. Would that be so bad? I had the money. I could make this go away. But then I thought about what that would teach them. That cruelty works. That manipulation pays. That if you hurt someone badly enough, they'll surrender. What message would that send to Sarah? To my grandchildren? And what would it cost me? Not just money, but my self-respect, my dignity, my sense of what was right. I got out of bed and went to my home office. I pulled out my file of evidence, bank statements, the forged mortgage documents, the credit card fraud, the sold heirloom. I spread it all out on my desk. These weren't the actions of a son who loved his mother. These were the actions of a criminal who saw an opportunity and took it. The next morning, I called Margaret. Do whatever you need to do. Hire whatever experts we need. I'm not giving them a penny. I'm not giving them control. I'm fighting this all the way. It's going to get worse before it gets better, Margaret warned. Let it, I said. I'm ready. But I wasn't ready. Not for what came next. Margaret assembled a team like she was preparing for war. A forensic accountant named Daniel Price who could track every dollar. A handwriting expert named Linda Morrison who could prove the forged signatures. A private investigator named Frank Davidson who could document Tyler and Amber's actual lifestyle. We had 10 days until the conservatorship hearing. 10 days to build a case that would prove I was competent and that Tyler and Amber were predators. Linda Morrison examined the mortgage documents and delivered her findings in Margaret's office. These signatures are definitely forged. The baseline characteristics are wrong, the pressure patterns don't match, and there are hesitation marks that suggest someone was copying rather than signing naturally. But here's the interesting part. She laid out another document. The forgery was notarized. A real notary public stamped these documents, swearing that you appeared before her and signed them voluntarily. But I never met any notary, I said. Exactly. Which means the notary committed fraud. Her name is Crystal Hayes. Margaret's investigator tracked her down. Linda pushed another paper toward me. She's Amber's cousin. My mouth fell open. They hadn't just forged my signature. They'd recruited a family member with a notary license to make it official. This wasn't a desperate act. This was a planned conspiracy. Frank Davidson had been following Tyler and Amber for a week. His report was damning. They were meeting with bankruptcy attorneys. They were fighting constantly. Frank had recorded audio of them screaming at each other outside a lawyer's office, blaming each other for their situation. But the real discovery came from Daniel Price, the forensic accountant. He'd spent 5 days analyzing every financial transaction connected to Tyler and Amber, tracking credit cards, loans, purchases. He presented his findings in a thick binder. Mrs. Anderson, your son and daughter-in-law have committed systematic fraud. Beyond the forged mortgage and the credit card in your name, I found 3 department store credit cards opened using your information totaling $23,000 in charges. A personal loan from an online lender using your details for $15,000. A line of credit at a furniture store for $12,000. In total, they've created $97,000 in fraudulent debt in your name. I felt like I couldn't breathe. $97,000. On top of the $200,000+ I'd given willingly. They'd been destroying my credit for months, maybe years, funding their lifestyle while planning their exit strategy. They knew this day would come, Daniel continued. These credit applications date back 10 months. They were preparing for you to eventually cut them off. They were building a safety net using your identity. Margaret leaned forward. Crystal Hayes, the notary, will testify. Frank caught her on a recorded call, admitting Amber paid her $2,000 to notarize the forged documents. She's facing criminal charges and she's cooperating to reduce her sentence. We have her. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. We had evidence. We had proof. We could expose them. But Tyler wasn't done fighting. 3 days before the conservatorship hearing, he showed up at my house at 10 o'clock at night. I saw him through the window, pacing on my porch. He looked disheveled, desperate. Part of me wanted to ignore him, but another part, the part that remembered him as my little boy, made me open the door. He looked terrible. His eyes were red. He smelled like alcohol. He stumbled slightly when he tried to step forward. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked. "Mom, please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please help us. One more time. I'm begging you." My heart clenched. This was my son, my child, crying on my doorstep. "Tyler, you need to go home." I can't. Tears streamed down his face. We're going to lose everything. The house is in foreclosure. The credit cards are maxed. The lawyers cost too much. Mom, please. I'm your son. Don't let me lose everything. I felt myself wavering. Maybe we could work something out. Maybe if he was really sorry. Just help us with the house, he pleaded. Just the mortgage. We'll figure out the rest. I'll get a job. I'll pay you back. I promise. Mom, please. Dad would want you to help me. He'd want you to take care of his son. And there it was, using Robert's memory as a weapon. Again. The tears stopped being about regret and became about manipulation. Your father would want you to stand on your own feet, I said quietly. He'd want you to be honest, to work hard, to take responsibility for your choices. Tyler's face changed. The tears dried up instantly. His expression went cold, calculating. It was like watching a mask fall off. Fine, he said, his voice flat. You're going to regret this. We're going to take you down with us. If we lose everything, so do you. He turned and walked away. No stumbling now. No desperate drunk. He'd been performing, and when the performance didn't work, he dropped it instantly. I locked my door and sat in the dark, shaking. That hadn't been a cry for help. That had been a test. He was seeing if I was weak enough to crack before the hearing. The next morning brought worse news. Margaret called me before I'd finished my coffee. They've amended the conservatorship petition again. They're claiming you have early-stage dementia and that you manipulated them into financial arrangements. Helen, they're going after your mental competency hard. They're going to argue that cutting them off was evidence of confusion and paranoia, not rational decision-making. But we have medical records. I'm healthy. We do. But they've lined up 2 acquaintances who'll testify that you've seemed forgetful or confused, and they're going to use your age and widowhood against you. The lonely widow who's losing her mental grip. It's a narrative that some judges are sympathetic to. Margaret arranged for me to be evaluated by 3 independent experts, 2 psychiatrists and a neurologist. I spent 2 full days being tested, interviewed, analyzed. It was exhausting and humiliating, but all 3 doctors confirmed what I already knew. I was sharp, competent, and showed no signs of cognitive decline. But Roger Dunn, Tyler and Amber's attorney, was good at his job. He started deposing my friends and neighbors. Frank Davidson warned me that the questions were designed to create doubt. Has she seemed more isolated? Have you noticed any memory lapses? Does she seem as social as she used to be? Normal grief responses after losing a spouse, twisted into evidence of decline. Then Frank brought me devastating news from his surveillance work. He'd been recording Tyler and Amber for weeks, documenting their lifestyle, their spending, their activities. But the most recent recording was different. Helen, you need to hear this. I recorded them at a restaurant 3 nights ago. I need you to prepare yourself. He played the audio. Tyler and Amber's voices, tinny through the recording device, but clear enough. Amber, how much longer do we have to keep this up? The lawyers are bleeding us dry. Tyler, just until the hearing. Once I get conservatorship, it's over. Amber, and you're sure you can access everything? Tyler, that's the whole point of conservatorship. I'll have legal authority over all her accounts. We liquidate everything fast. Retirement accounts, investments, everything. Amber, what about her? Tyler, what about her? Once the money's gone, she can't do anything. We file for bankruptcy for ourselves, and the bankruptcy trustee can't touch what's in the conservatorship. It'll be gone before anyone realizes what happened. Amber, she'll be left with nothing. Tyler, at that point, what can she do? The money will be gone. And honestly, after what she's put us through, she deserves it. I sat in Margaret's office listening to my son plan to financially destroy me, and I felt something inside me break and then harden. This wasn't about money anymore. This wasn't about family. This was about survival. They're planning to steal everything, I said. Everything Robert and I worked for. Everything we saved. They're going to leave me with nothing. Not if we stop them at the hearing, Margaret said. We have this recording. We have the forensic evidence. We have the expert testimonies. Helen, we can win, but you need to be strong on that stand. You need to show the judge who you really are." The night before the hearing, Sarah came over. We sat together in my living room, and she held my hand. "Mom, no matter what happens tomorrow, I'm proud of you. You stood up for yourself. You didn't let them bully you. That takes strength." "I'm scared," I admitted. "What if the judge believes them? What if I lose everything?" "You won't, because you're telling the truth. And the truth has to count for something." I wanted to believe her, but I'd watched truth get buried under lies for months now. I'd seen my reputation destroyed, my community turn away, my credit damaged. Truth didn't always win. But giving up wasn't an option either. The next morning, I put on my best suit. I looked at myself in the mirror, 63 years old, widowed, betrayed by my own son, but still standing, still fighting. "Robert," I said to his photograph on my dresser, "if you're watching, I need your strength today. Help me get through this." I drove to the courthouse with Sarah beside me. Margaret met us at the entrance. "Remember," she said, "stay calm, answer questions clearly. Don't let Roger Dunn bait you. Show the judge who you really are." We walked into that courtroom, and across the aisle sat Tyler and Amber. They looked concerned, worried, like dutiful children afraid for their mother. It was all performance. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, and the battle for my life began. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Older wood paneling, fluorescent lights, rows of benches, mostly empty except for Sarah, Mark, and a few people I didn't recognize. Tyler and Amber sat at their table with Roger Dunn, who had slicked back hair and an expensive suit that suggested he did well for himself on cases like these. Judge Morrison was a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed the petition documents silently for what felt like an eternity. "This is a petition for conservatorship over the person and estate of Helen Anderson, filed by her son Tyler Anderson," she said finally. "Mr. Dunn, you may proceed." Roger Dunn stood and launched into his opening statement. He painted a picture of a once vibrant woman now showing signs of decline. A widow struggling with grief who'd made increasingly irrational financial decisions. A mother whose behavior had become erratic and paranoid, accusing her own family of terrible things. He suggested that the stress of losing Robert had affected me more deeply than anyone realized. "Your Honor, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson aren't here to hurt anyone. They're here because they love Mrs. Anderson and are concerned for her well-being. They've watched her deteriorate over the past year. They've tried to help, but she's pushed them away, cut them off financially in ways that hurt not just them but herself. She needs protection from her own declining judgment, and her son is here to provide that protection." It was a compelling story. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed it myself. Then Roger called Tyler to the stand. My son took the oath, his hand on the Bible, swearing to tell the truth. The irony burned. Roger guided him through a series of questions designed to show concern. Tyler talked about how I'd become withdrawn after Robert died, how I'd stopped attending social events, how I'd seemed confused during conversations, forgetting things we'd discussed. "Can you give an example?" Roger asked. She'd call me and ask about my work situation, and I'd explain it to her. Then a week later, she'd call and ask the exact same questions, like we'd never talked about it. Or she'd forget we had plans and make other commitments. Tyler's voice was sad, concerned. At first, I thought it was normal grief, but it kept getting worse. It was a complete lie. I'd never called Tyler repeatedly asking the same questions. But how do you prove a negative? How do you prove something didn't happen? Roger continued. And the financial support you received from your mother, can you describe that? Mom insisted on helping us. We were hesitant at first, but she really wanted to. She said Dad would have wanted her to help family, but then she'd forget she'd agreed to things. We'd mention plans we'd made together, and she'd have no memory of them. It was scary. And when she cut off financial support, It came out of nowhere. She sent a text message that didn't make any sense, accusing us of things that never happened. We tried to talk to her, to understand, but she was hostile, angry, not like herself at all. I watched my son lie smoothly, confidently, and I felt something inside me go numb. This was who he'd become. Or maybe this was who he'd always been, and I'd never wanted to see it. Roger asked about the credit cards, the mortgage, all of it. Tyler had an explanation for everything. The credit cards were joint accounts I'd agreed to. The mortgage co-signing was something I'd insisted on. Everything was my idea, my confusion, my failing memory making me forget my own decisions. Then came Amber's testimony. She was even better than Tyler. Tears welled up as she talked about how hard it was to watch me decline. How she tried to help, tried to be supportive, but I'd turned against her. She painted herself as the devoted daughter-in-law who'd been rejected by a mother-in-law, losing her grip on reality. Has Mrs. Anderson ever made unfounded accusations? Roger asked. Many times. Amber dabbed at her eyes. She accused us of stealing from her. She claimed we forged documents, committed fraud. None of it was true. We'd never hurt her, but she was convinced. It was like she was creating this whole narrative in her head that had no basis in reality. The judge listened carefully, taking notes. I couldn't read her expression. Then Roger called one of my acquaintances from church, a woman named Patricia Simmons. I'd known her casually for years. She took the stand looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Simmons, you've known Mrs. Anderson for how long? About 8 years. We're in the same women's group at church. Have you noticed any changes in her behavior over the past year? Patricia hesitated. She's been more withdrawn since her husband passed. Less social. Have you noticed anything else? Any confusion or forgetfulness? Well, Patricia looked at me apologetically. There was one time she seemed confused about what week it was, and she's repeated stories a few times. But I thought that was just normal. Thank you, Mrs. Simmons. It went on like this. Small observations, innocent moments, all twisted into evidence of decline. By the time Roger rested his case, he'd built a picture of a woman slowly losing her mental capacity and a family trying desperately to help. Then it was Margaret's turn. She stood, and her opening statement was direct and sharp. Your Honor, this isn't a conservatorship case. This is a fraud case. Tyler and Amber Anderson aren't concerned family members. They're criminals who've been systematically stealing from Mrs. Anderson for 18 months, and now they're trying to use the legal system to continue that theft. Roger objected, but the judge overruled him. I'll allow it. Continue, Miss Brennan. Margaret called her witnesses methodically. First, the 3 medical experts who'd evaluated me. Each testified that I showed no signs of cognitive impairment. I was sharp, coherent, and fully competent. My memory was excellent. My reasoning was sound. The psychiatrist was particularly strong. Mrs. Anderson's decision to cut off financial support wasn't irrational or confused. It was a completely appropriate response to discovering she was being manipulated and defrauded. If anything, it shows excellent judgment and self-preservation instincts. Then Margaret called Linda Morrison, the handwriting expert. Linda presented her analysis of the forged mortgage documents, showing side-by-side comparisons of my real signature versus the forgery. She explained the technical details, the pressure points, the hesitation marks. It was clear, scientific proof that I'd never signed those documents. And the notarization? Margaret asked. The notary who stamped these documents, Crystal Hayes, has admitted in a sworn statement that she notarized these signatures without Mrs. Anderson present, at the request of Amber Anderson, who paid her $2,000 to commit this fraud. Tyler and Amber's faces went white. Roger looked like he'd been punched. Margaret called Daniel Price next. The forensic accountant walked the judge through every fraudulent transaction. The $97,000 in debt created in my name. The credit cards I never applied for. The personal loans I never requested. He presented documentation for all of it. This is a pattern of systematic identity theft and fraud, spanning at least 10 months, Daniel testified. Mrs. Anderson is the victim here, not the person in need of protection. Then came Frank Davidson, the private investigator. He testified about his surveillance, the luxury cars, the dinner parties, the meetings with bankruptcy attorneys, the evidence that Tyler and Amber were living far beyond any legitimate means. And then Margaret played the recording. The courtroom fell silent as Tyler and Amber's voices filled the space. Their plan to liquidate my assets, file bankruptcy, leave me with nothing. Their callous discussion of my fate. Amber saying, "She'll be left with nothing," and Tyler responding, "At that point, what can she do?" I watched the judge's face harden as she listened. I watched Roger Dunn close his eyes. I watched Tyler and Amber both go pale, then flush red, realizing they'd been caught. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. Judge Morrison looked at Tyler. "Mr. Anderson, did you or did you not say those words on this recording?" Tyler opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Roger, who wouldn't meet his eyes. "Your Honor, that was taken out of context." Out of context? The judge's voice was ice. "Please explain the context in which discussing liquidating your mother's assets and leaving her with nothing is acceptable." Tyler couldn't answer. Amber started crying, but these weren't sympathetic tears anymore. These were panicked tears. "The context," Amber blurted out, "was that Tyler was just venting. We were stressed. We didn't mean it literally." "You discussed specific steps," the judge said. "Liquidating accounts, filing bankruptcy. That sounds quite literal to me." Margaret called me to the stand. I took the oath, my hand steady, my voice clear. She walked me through everything. The initial help I'd given willingly. The lies about Tyler's job, the lies about medical bills, the discovery of the fraud, my decision to cut off support, and why it was rational, necessary, and self-protective. "Mrs. Anderson, do you love your son?" "I do," I said. "But love doesn't mean enabling criminal behavior. Love doesn't mean letting someone destroy you financially and emotionally. I love my son, but I can't help him destroy me." Roger Dunn cross-examined me, trying to trip me up, trying to make me seem confused or vindictive. But I'd prepared for this. I answered every question clearly, calmly. I provided details, dates, documentation. I showed exactly who I was. A competent, rational woman who'd been victimized by her own family. When I stepped down, Margaret rested our case. Judge Morrison reviewed her notes. The silence stretched out. Finally, she looked up. "I'm prepared to rule. The petition for conservatorship is denied. Completely and unequivocally denied." Relief flooded through me so powerfully I almost couldn't breathe. The judge continued, her voice stern. "Furthermore, the evidence presented here suggests serious criminal conduct. I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation into charges of forgery, identity theft, fraud, and financial elder abuse." Tyler and Amber both started talking at once, trying to explain, but the judge silenced them. "Mr. Anderson, Mrs. Anderson, I strongly suggest you consult with criminal defense attorneys. You're going to need them." She looked at me. "Mrs. Anderson, I'm issuing a restraining order, effective immediately. Tyler and Amber Anderson are to have no contact with you whatsoever. Any violation will result in immediate arrest." The gavel came down. It was over. Tyler and Amber were escorted out by court security, Amber sobbing, Tyler silent and pale. Roger Dunn gathered his papers quickly, apologizing to the judge for bringing the case, claiming he'd been misled by his clients. Margaret squeezed my shoulder. "You did it. You won." Sarah was crying, hugging me. Mark stood behind her, smiling with relief. But as we left the courtroom, a detective approached us. Detective James Whitfield, from the Financial Crimes Unit. He introduced himself politely and asked if I'd be willing to cooperate with a criminal investigation. "We've been looking at your son and daughter-in-law for other potential victims. The evidence presented today gives us probable cause to move forward. We'll need your full cooperation." "You have it," I said without hesitation. "Everything I have, every document, every piece of evidence, it's yours." Detective Whitfield nodded. I need to be honest with you, Mrs. Anderson. This might go to trial. They might face serious prison time. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Tyler on the stand, lying smoothly. I thought about Amber's tears, all manipulation. I thought about that recording, their casual discussion of destroying me financially. I'm prepared, I said. My son made his choices. Now he faces the consequences. We walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon Sunday. Sarah and Mark headed to their car, promising to call later. Margaret walked with me to mine. How do you feel? She asked. I considered the question. My son had betrayed me, used me, tried to destroy me. I'd spent 6 months fighting for my life, my reputation, my financial security. I'd lost friends, been ostracized by my church, had my character attacked publicly. I'd discovered depths of cruelty in my own child I'd never imagined possible. But I'd fought back. I'd stood up for myself. I'd refused to be a victim. I'd won. I feel free, I said quietly. But there was sadness, too. Victory doesn't erase the pain of betrayal. It just ends the battle. The grief would come later, probably in waves. The loss of the son I thought I had, the acknowledgement that he'd never existed, or if he had, he was long gone. For now, though, I had won. I had my life back. My autonomy, my dignity, my self-respect. I drove home alone, the restraining order in my purse, Detective Whitfield's card in my wallet, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt like I could breathe. 6 months later, I sat on my back porch with morning coffee, Sarah beside me, my grandchildren, Emma and Jacob playing in the yard. The early spring sunshine was warm, and the world felt gentler than it had in a long time. The legal outcomes had been decisive. Tyler and Amber both pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and financial elder abuse. They'd taken plea deals to avoid trial, which spared me from having to testify in criminal court. Tyler received 3 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and full restitution. The amount was over $200,000, which he'd likely never be able to pay. Amber received 2 years probation with her own restitution requirements. Crystal Hayes, Amber's cousin who'd notarized the forged documents, lost her notary license permanently and received probation as well. Her cooperation had helped build the case against Tyler and Amber. The bank cleared my credit of all fraudulent debt. The criminal proceedings proved I was a victim, not a deadbeat. My credit score recovered faster than I'd expected. The house Tyler and Amber had been living in went into foreclosure, and they lost everything. Last I heard, they'd moved to a small apartment 2 hours away, both working retail jobs to make ends meet. My reputation in the community had been harder to rebuild, but truth has a way of spreading eventually. The people who'd believed Amber's social media posts saw the court outcomes. My church group apologized and welcomed me back. I accepted the apology but declined to rejoin. Some wounds heal, but they leave scars. I'd found a new church, a smaller congregation where I'd started volunteering again, this time with eyes wide open about healthy boundaries. Sarah had struggled with guilt for months, feeling she should have seen the truth sooner. We'd worked through it together, and if anything, we'd grown closer. Her husband Mark had been a rock for both of us. And the grandchildren, bless them, had adapted with the resilience only children have. I'd had to explain to Emma and Jacob, in age-appropriate terms, what had happened with their uncle. Sometimes people make very bad choices that hurt others, I'd told them. Uncle Tyler hurt Grandma and had to face consequences. We still love him, but we can't trust him right now, and we have to keep ourselves safe. Emma, at 8 years old, had processed it surprisingly well. Like when Tommy at school was being mean and got sent to the principal, she'd asked. Something like that, sweetie. Sometimes even grown-ups need consequences. Jacob, at 11, had been angrier. He was mean to you, Grandma. I don't want to see him anymore. That's okay, I'd told him. You don't have to. Your feelings are valid. The financial losses had been significant, but not devastating. I still had my retirement accounts, my savings, my house. I'd lost over $200,000 to Tyler and Amber, but Robert's life insurance and our careful planning over decades meant I was still secure. It hurt, but it didn't destroy me. What had changed most was me. I'd started a support group at a community center for victims of financial elder abuse. Once a month, 6 to 8 people gathered to share stories, offer support, and learn how to protect themselves. I discovered I wasn't alone. So many people had similar stories. Adult children draining their parents, relatives taking advantage of trust. It was heartbreakingly common. I also volunteered at a legal aid clinic twice a month, helping other seniors recognize the warning signs of financial manipulation. Margaret had connected me with the program, and I'd found purpose in it. My pain could help others. My experience could protect someone else's mother or father. I'd even started dating. Thomas was a widower from my new church, a retired teacher with kind eyes and a gentle sense of humor. We'd gone to dinner 3 times, walked in the park twice, and talked on the phone almost every evening. It was slow and comfortable, and nothing like the desperate connection I'd felt with Robert, but that was okay. This was companionship, not replacement. We both understood that. The biggest surprise had been a letter I'd received 3 months after the criminal sentencing. It was from Tyler. I'd stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it, afraid of what it might contain. It wasn't an apology. Tyler's letter was bitter and angry. He blamed me for destroying his life, claimed that I could have just helped and none of this would have happened, argued that what he'd done wasn't really that bad and I'd overreacted. He took no responsibility for his choices. He painted himself as the victim of my cruelty. I read it once, filed it with Margaret in case we needed it for future legal matters, and let it go. That letter was the final confirmation of what I'd already learned. My son might never understand what he'd done wrong. He might never feel genuine remorse. He might always believe he was justified in his actions. And that was sad. Deeply, painfully sad. But it wasn't my responsibility to fix him. It wasn't my job to make him see truth he refused to acknowledge. I'd spent 18 months enabling him, another 6 months fighting him, and now I was done. The door was closed. Sarah had asked me once if I'd ever reconcile with Tyler. I don't know, I'd answered honestly. Maybe someday, if he genuinely changes, if he takes real responsibility, if he does the work to become a different person. But I'm not holding my breath. And I'm not sacrificing my peace waiting for it to happen. Does that make you sad? Sarah had asked. Every day, I'd admitted. I mourn the son I thought I had. I grieve the relationship we'll never have. But I don't regret protecting myself. Love and boundaries can coexist. Sometimes they have to. I'd learned so much in these past months. I'd learned that generosity without boundaries isn't love. It's enabling. I'd learned that being a good parent doesn't mean sacrificing yourself on the altar of your child's wants. I'd learned that saying no is sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for the person who needs to hear it. I'd learned that family titles don't excuse abuse. Being someone's mother didn't obligate me to fund their lifestyle or tolerate their cruelty. Being someone's son didn't give Tyler the right to use me as an ATM and attack me when I said enough. I'd learned that people show you who they are through their actions, and you have to believe them. Tyler had shown me who he was. Someone willing to forge documents, commit fraud, threaten legal action, poison family relationships, and plan to financially devastate me. Those weren't the actions of someone struggling and making mistakes. Those were the actions of someone making calculated, cruel choices. But I'd also learned that I was stronger than I'd known. I'd stood up to my own son. I'd fought a legal battle that could have destroyed me. I'd endured public humiliation, family rupture, and financial stress. And I'd come through it intact. Wounded, yes. Changed, absolutely. But intact. And, in some ways, stronger. Now, sitting on my porch with Sarah, watching my grandchildren play, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real, genuine peace. Sarah looked at me. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" "Everything," I said. "And nothing. Mostly I'm just grateful to be here. to have this moment, to have you and the kids. I'm proud of you, Sarah said. What you did took courage. A lot of mothers wouldn't have fought back. A lot of mothers don't have to, I said. I wish I'd been one of them, but I'm glad I fought. I'm glad I stood up for myself. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was right. Thomas called to confirm dinner plans for that evening. We were trying a new Italian restaurant downtown. Small steps, building a new life. My phone buzzed with a message from someone in my support group, thanking me for advice I'd given at our last meeting. She was dealing with a similar situation, and my story had given her courage to seek legal help. This was my life now. Quieter than before. More cautious, certainly, but also more authentic. I wasn't funding anyone's lifestyle. I wasn't being used. I wasn't enabling destructive behavior. I was living honestly, with dignity, surrounded by people who loved me for who I was, not what I could provide. I thought about that morning 6 months ago, standing in my kitchen reading Tyler's message. We think it's best if Mom keeps her distance for a while. I thought about my hands shaking as I typed my response about cutting off the money. I thought about how terrified I'd been of what would happen next. That decision had led to 6 months of hell. Legal battles, public humiliation, family betrayal, criminal investigations. It had cost me over $200,000, countless hours of stress, and relationships I'd valued. But it had also led to freedom, self-respect, truth, healthy boundaries, a life built on authenticity rather than manipulation. I wouldn't change my decision. Standing up for myself was the best choice I'd ever made. I looked at Sarah. You know what the hardest part was? What? Accepting that the son I thought I had never really existed. Or if he did, he'd been gone for a long time, and I'd been too afraid to see it. I kept waiting for my little boy to come back, the sweet kid who used to make me cards for Mother's Day and tell me he loved me. But that person was gone, if he'd ever truly been there. That must hurt, Sarah said softly. Every day. But holding on to an illusion was hurting me more. Sometimes you have to let go of who you wish someone was and accept who they actually are. And then you have to decide if that person gets to be part of your life. And Tyler doesn't? Not unless he becomes someone completely different. Not unless he does real work to change, to take responsibility, to understand the harm he caused. And honestly, I don't think that'll happen. So I've made peace with losing him. It's a grief I'll carry forever, but it's better than being destroyed by him. Emma ran up to the porch, breathless and smiling. Grandma, can we have lemonade? Of course, sweetheart. I stood up, kissed the top of her head, and went inside to get drinks for the kids. This was enough. This was more than enough. My daughter, my grandchildren, my new friends, my volunteer work, my budding relationship with Thomas. A life built on truth and mutual respect. A life where I set boundaries and enforced them. A life where I was valued for who I was, not what I could provide. As I poured lemonade into plastic cups, I thought about what I'd want to say to someone else in my situation. Someone dealing with financial manipulation from family. Someone wondering if they should keep helping or draw a line. You are not obligated to fund anyone else's lifestyle, even family, especially family who shows no gratitude, only entitlement. Your worth is not measured by how much you give. Love does not equal unlimited financial support. Saying no is not selfish. Protecting yourself is not betraying your family. You deserve respect, honesty, and genuine love. If someone only wants you for what you can provide financially, they don't love you, they use you. It's never too late to set boundaries. It's never too late to say enough. It's never too late to stand up for yourself. And most importantly, you are stronger than you think. Whatever happens when you draw that line, you can survive it. You can fight back. You can win. I carried the lemonade outside to where my grandchildren waited. Sarah smiled at me. The spring sunshine felt warm and promising. My son had wanted me gone. In a way, he got his wish. The mother who would accept anything from him, who would enable his worst behavior, who would sacrifice herself to keep peace, was gone. But the woman who respected herself, who stood up for what was right, who wouldn't be used or manipulated, who had fought for her dignity and won, was here to stay. And I'd never been stronger. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? Have you ever loved someone but had to walk away for your own protection? It's one of the hardest things anyone can face. If you've been through something similar, you're not alone. If you're going through it now, please know that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival, and it's okay. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you dealt with financial manipulation from family? How did you handle it? What advice would you give to someone in a similar situation? Your story might help someone else find the courage they need. If this story touched your heart or helped you in any way, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult times. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, please share this story with them. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope you find the courage to stand up for yourself whenever you need it, the wisdom to recognize when love has become manipulation, and the strength to choose your own well-being. You deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. Always remember that. Take care of yourselves, set those boundaries, stand firm in your worth, and never let anyone convince you that protecting yourself is wrong. Until next time, may you find peace, strength, and the courage to do what's right, even when it's hard.